how many downloads of Jim and Bill It's Another Day podcast?
Today, the podcast show has fetched 400 million downloads since its start, and an average of 350,000 downloads per episode, about 3.9 million downloads per week.
Well, hello there. It's another day. I'm Jim Harrington.
And I am Bill Knight. By the way, just so we don't forget, brought to you by Right Side Coffee.
Yeah, yes, delicious. Right Side Coffee, the perfect drink for your holiday parties. Right Side Coffee, it's actually Jim and Bill's Right Side Coffee, not to be confused with some other Right Side Coffee, which is not ours, okay? Jim and Bill's Right Side Coffee, and you can only get it at rightsideshop.com. Rightsideshop.com. It's an amazing store. It has, besides the coffee, hats, cups, sweatshirts, T-shirts, neat little things that you can buy. It's always nice to get a gift like a week after New Year's. You know, when you think everything's all done, I got one more. See, there it is.
You know, those New Year's surprises are kind of nice. So That's what you got to do. You got to look at it that way. Or, you know what's coming up is the next big holiday.
What are you planning for Easter?
Valentine's.
Oh, okay. We talking Valentine's Day already?
Sure. You get your Valentine's coffee. What the heck? You know?
That's true. I miss Festivus, right, for the rest of it.
There's a lot of them, you know. But either way, Right Side Coffee, get it today. Check out the swag. It's cool stuff.
And we have Juan, Jose, and the border crosses, too.
They're waiting.
That's right, guys.
Wake up on the right side with Right Side Coffee.
Marvelous. They do such a nice job, you know. They really do. Did you see there was a story on 60 Minutes this past weekend? They are such a propaganda arm of the deep state. You know, they want desperately
all the media these days.
Oh, they want desperately to take your guns away. They are working really hard. They did a report on Mexico, and apparently, and I didn't know this. It said over the weekend, 60 Minutes did a story about gun control in Mexico, pointing that the country has only one gun store and that it's located on a military base. And they made it sound like Mexico's got it down just right. Here's a little bit of what 60 Minutes said over the weekend about Mexico and how special they are with their handling of civilian guns. Listen.
Like the U.S., Mexico's Constitution grants citizens the right to bear arms. But unlike the U.S., that right comes with a long list of restrictions. There's only one gun store in Mexico, in the middle of a heavily guarded military base in Mexico City. We were allowed in. But before customers can enter, they have to show proof they've passed psychological tests, drug screens, and extensive background checks. The store sells about 1,000 guns a month, mostly shotguns, small caliber rifles, and handguns. What civilians can't buy here are the weapons the cartel favors. Those are not legally sold anywhere in Mexico.
Cartel's favorite weapons are weapons of war. Belt feds, 50 caliber rifles, guns that you can shoot from a mile away. The more expensive, the more powerful, the sexier they think they are.
It's a trophy.
It is a trophy.
You know, it's amazing. They make it sound like Mexico's got it figured out. You know, they say they have a constitution and they have the right to bear arms too, but with a list of restrictions. And they make it sound like Mexico's got it all figured out. There's more gun violence in Mexico than you could ever dream of anywhere probably on the planet. I mean, that's where the cartels are based out of. You're always hearing about American couples going on vacation, drive across the border and disappear. They find their bodies about 3 months later in their cars. And it's always gun violence. And they make it sound, well, there's only one gun store in Mexico. You know,
then you know what that means. That means the military's dirty.
Well, you know, Bill, there's a lot of people who will tell you there's a lot of truth to that. I don't think the whole military is dirty, but I think they have their cells. You know,
yeah, well, the government's dirty, or there's corruption within, and that gets the guns to the bad players.
Yeah, well, I thought that was interesting because 60 Minutes, they try to make it sound like oh, if only we had more restrictions on guns in our country, we wouldn't have a problem. You have to remember, folks, I think I saw a figure where we have 330 million people. We probably have 200 million at least guns in this country. And most of the people who own guns, the vast majority of people who own guns, keep them safe and secure and handle them properly. They don't go in and rob banks. They don't have gunfights on the street. They don't, it's not the Wild West. But we're a country, like I said, of 330 million people. There's a lot of people out there, and there's a lot. And by the way, which leads me to another story, Bill. I'm on a roll now.
All right.
Did you hear about?
He's up.
Yeah. Did you hear about? You heard about Panama, and we want to take it back. Trump says.
Oh yeah, the guy down there threatening to release or unleash migrants on us.
Well, yeah. This is the president of Colombia. He was essentially threatened by. Let me see where they have the story. He was threatened by. He heard the story about President Trump wanting to get, to take back Panama, the Panama Canal, and so this Colombian president essentially said, "Well, you keep doing that, and we're going to send a bunch of people to your border. We're going to surge your border." The guy's name is Gustavo Petro. He's a former Marxist guerrilla and vocal supporter of Joe Biden. He wrote in a post on X that the number of illegal migrants crossing it may increase by the millions. He's saying he's going to surge our border with illegals if we don't back down on the Panama Canal take back. Well, let me tell you, first of all, Bill, people aren't talking about that. When we gave the Panama Canal to Panama for $1.
Carter did that.
Yeah, that meatball gave it for $1. The good news is we did it with a contract and restrictions. We just didn't, over coffee take a buck and say, we'll see you. There was an agreement. In the agreement, they had to keep an orderly control of the canal, and there had to be a system in place where it was fair for everybody. Well, since we gave it to Panama, they've increased our rates at least 3 times. We're paying far more than a lot of people. If anybody's being picked on in this whole Panama Canal, it's the United States.
Yeah. Hey, you know what? We built that Panama Canal. Carter is the one that gave it away for $1.
Yeah, unbelievable.
And there was a lot of people aren't old enough to remember it. I was a baby and swaddling baby in diapers, but I remember it. And there was a lot of backlash about it. People are going, that was the stupidest
I just can't
thing.
imagine you in swaddling anything, but that's okay. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Yes.
But it was at the time. Even the news was going, I don't know about this, and
I think it was 1979.
Yeah,
I think it was 1979, and I think I remember it, and I can remember thinking how stupid it was even back then. But he did it, but at least the good news is we have take back clauses in the agreement, meaning if they screw it up, we can take it back. See, and that's what the media isn't telling the American people.
Right. I think Trump will take it back when he gets in, and I think he's probably gonna, talk to Denmark and buy Greenland too. I think you're gonna see those two things.
Well, the other thing is this. I also think that Colombia, he can talk about sending 1 million people. I think there's going to be a massive change at our border. Massive change. You'll be able to surge the border, but you're not going to be able to cross it.
Biden is in a hurry, even though there's a buyback of all the materials. He's still shipping out the materials, daily, as quick as they can. This guy is doing everything he can to be a disruptor. And, I'm glad he's doing it, though, because I think people are starting to see what Biden really is and what the Democrats really are. And his legacy is going to be a stain on
Bill,
history.
He may have destroyed the Democratic Party at least 4 generations.
Well, he's probably, the Democratic Party has outlived every party that has come up against it. It has been it's shined forever. The Republican Party is not as old as the Democrat Party, but the Democrat Party could be on its last leg.
The Democratic Party it's changed. And what they don't want you to know is that it's being run by socialists now. There's a large faction of Democrats who thinks it's still moderate. The ones that aren't paying attention, the ones who are historically Democrat, the rank and file whose parents were Democrats and grandparents were Democrats, and it's like being in a religion. It's like, oh well, I'm sorry, we're a family of Democrats here. Well, and that's fine, except maybe it's time now for you to pay attention, because maybe things have changed in the political landscape, and the party that you're following isn't the party that your parents would have followed or your grandparents would have followed. I mean, Joe Manchin talked about that. He had an interview. I haven't got the audio, but he was talking about how that party isn't the party. He said, how did the Democratic Party lose me, meaning Manchin? How did they lose me? He said, I was from a Democratic family. I grew up in a Democratic state. How did the Democratic Party lose me? It lost me because the Democratic Party went off the rails, and it's now being run by a bunch of socialists.
And, I've got a good friend. He's a Democrat, lifelong Democrat. Before I, went on the road for the holidays, we were talking, and he goes, since I was a little kid, I've been a Democrat all my life. He goes, but I do vote for Republicans now, and I still vote for Democrats. He goes, I said, that's fine. The fact is that you do that makes you a patriot because, an American, because the fact that we can disagree is a good thing. But you're not too far from where I am in the middle. I'm a little bit right, you're a little bit left, but that's what it's about. But what's happened is somebody has taken over this party and taken extreme left. And and when I say extreme, what you think would be an extreme, they've gone beyond that. It's a whole different party.
When you have AOC speaking for the Democratic Party, she's a socialist.
Yeah.
There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
Bernie Sanders said it best. He goes, we couldn't create a socialist party. So the only thing to do is be a Democrat and take over the party. And that's what they've done. So you've got to either kick those socialists out of your party and just say, I'm sorry, you are not a Democrat. You're no longer a Democrat. And you go form your own party. So
this Colombian president, this Gustavo Petro, he really and truly, he threatened us like a thug. And that's not going to go over well at all with Trump. I would be, with all due respect, these people have seen a weak and feckless United States for the past 4 years. It has collapsed in Afghanistan, when they should have had an organized and respected withdrawal. It became a Keystone Cops retreat. These guys pulled out as if they were being chased by wild dogs, and a lot of good people were either injured or killed or left behind, and that's what they did in Afghanistan. We're back for no good reason, and I don't care what they say. A lot of people say, well, we have a vested interest in Ukraine. I don't think so. Before this war started, you couldn't get people to point to where the Ukraine was, in this country. All of a sudden, we have a vested interest. The other thing is this. If there's an interest, if anybody has an interest in the Ukraine, it should be those countries in Europe like, Poland and Germany. Let them handle it. They're big boys now. They have their own armies, their own governments, their own industry, their own budgets. Let them handle it. It's their neighborhood. What the hell are we doing over there? And now I know a lot of people disagree. You'll hear, well, Putin's a thug. I'm not saying Putin's a great guy. I don't say that at all. But I also don't think that we should be fighting wars everywhere around the world, putting our sons and daughters in jeopardy, on a regular basis for no good reason. They have a tendency in this government, in this administration, to have a cavalier approach about human life. We only lost 13 people in the withdrawal from 13 people. That's 13 too many. The thing I like about Trump is he values human life. Now, he's a tough guy, and he won't back out from a fight. But conversely, he also won't get us into unnecessary fights. Do you know what happened the other day, Bill? Did you hear about this?
What?
Our poorly trained military shot down one of its own F-18s.
No, I didn't hear about that. But, that makes sense to me.
I think it happened in the Persian Gulf. I haven't got the story of the article in front of me.
Okay, though, right?
Pardon? The pilot ejected. He's okay. But talk about embarrassing. Our planes send off their own transponder signals. We know who we're supposed to be shooting at. And some stupid nincompoop fired on one of our own planes and nearly killed one of our pilots and destroyed a multi-million-dollar aircraft. Go ahead, Bill.
That's what you have when you have woke training. It's not be all you can be. It's be whatever you can be.
Be whatever you want to be.
Be whatever, and you know what? Here's a daisy. Put it in the barrel of the gun. They have proven, this administration has proven that, this lovey, touchy, feely thing, sometimes you just got to be rough and gruff. And there's a time and a place for everything, and the military is not a time or a place.
I saw a videotape of
feelings.
I saw a videotape of today's basic training, and it looked like going to a disciplined summer camp. I went to basic training in 1969, and it was not a pleasant experience. Let me just leave it at that. It was a complete change from civilization as I knew it. They treated you from the second you got off the bus. You started to learn that you were not home anymore. You were not in Kansas anymore, and now they treat these guys, and everything is about diversity, equity, inclusion. Right. In basic training, Bill, when we would go running in uniform, we wore combat boots, and you had to work through the blisters that you got because they weren't designed to run in. They were what you wore in combat. But now you go into the military, they give you jogging shoes. It's like...
Yeah, when you're out in the combat field and you're wearing the boots for protection, all right, from all the elements. All right, guys, we're under attack. Can you opposing guys over there pause so we can take off our boots and put on our running sneakers?
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, it doesn't... But they're at the... I think that a guy like Pete Hegseth will reorganize it again. Now, look, I'm not saying that everything was perfect back in 1969 because it wasn't. We could improve on a lot of things. Discipline doesn't have to be insane, but conversely, it doesn't have to be accommodating. It doesn't have to bend over backwards to make, like Bill said, make you feel good about the experience.
Look, as far as the boots go, it's a good example because I've heard it before, but, we've come a long way in making things. Perhaps somebody can design a shoe that is rugged and durable, but yet gives certain flexibility to your foot.
Absolutely.
And comfort to where it has a way to keep it cool and warm, depending on the conditions. But, and I'm sure that we could do it if they sat there and said, look, this is what we need. We need, a more form-fitting, comfortable, but rugged shoe that can do all of this and maybe give it more climbing ability and things. But, I digress, but I'm just saying, you can't sit there and do what they're doing. Yeah, well, we're done. You've got to use what you have, what you're going to be equipped with. You can't train with anything else.
So think about it. We shot down one of our own planes. I think it was yesterday. I mean, that to me is there's no excuse for that, because there's too many people in that chain who make the decision to fire. I mean, when it shouldn't be like, oh, I see somebody, I thought shoot out of the sky. No, I think there's a command. Sir, we have him on so-and-so. We have is it a bogey? Yes. So you verify it's a bogey, you fire on it. There's too many decision makers. How that happened is beyond me.
The other thing they have an AI program now that can sit there and identify a target, take out a target, and counter all its counter offensives. Yeah. So in other words, it's basically designed for if we wanted to attack a certain area, they shot 1,000 warheads, it could take those 1,000 out without hesitation and still hit the target. Well, that AI program is relatively new, but it can be put into, and I'm sure they already have it for the planes. So when you're up there, it's already identified all the players in the field, any new player into the field, and it knows how to account and how to shoot for you. All you're up there really to do is to maintain flight and because look,
now,
drones, we know if a plane can fly itself.
On the other hand, you have to applaud the pilot and his training for being able to get out of the darn plane before it got hit. So kudos to the young pilot who escaped. But still, and that's not an easy thing, by the way. I don't know that you've ever heard about how brutal an ejection is from a jet airplane at speed. But I mean, it's not a pleasant experience.
Oh yeah, a lot of G-forces.
Yeah.
And sadly for the pilot and for the person that fired upon it, both of them are going to have to go and explain themselves, and there will be an investigation. No, they're not going to take it out of their pocketbook, but no, that comes out of the taxpayer's pocketbook, because they go through money like we go through water on a hot, sweaty day. That's just, they don't care.
Maybe someone could tell us, I can't see how the pilot is at fault.
He shouldn't be.
Unless he didn't have his transponder on or something. I don't know. And who knows?
Well, if they were playing a war game or something like that. But either way, something went wrong in the scenario. And you got to figure out where it went wrong and go to the source.
So, Bill, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but getting back to Panama and the canal, do you think I think that it would be a good thing for us to take it back with cost?
Yeah, I would give them $2. Say, look, you've doubled your money. Here's $2, but we're taking it back because you breached the contract.
Yep.
We dug it. We built it. Every piece of sweat.
35,000 men died making it.
Yeah. I'm sure there were some people there, but they were compensated, during the time. So, you could make a story one way or the other, but the simple fact is
it was one of the most inhospitable pieces of territory mankind has ever had to build something through. It was not an initial success. Initially, if I remember correctly, the French started the canal and couldn't get it done. They abandoned that thing because it was too difficult, and they didn't have the abilities to do it. Then McKinley came along, President McKinley. He raised all the funds. He raised tens of millions of dollars, which today would be tens of billions of dollars. And then he was assassinated. McKinley was. And in came Teddy Roosevelt, and there wasn't a challenge. He was a lot like Trump. There wasn't a challenge he ever saw that he didn't feel he could overcome. And he went full force into building that canal.
Whatever Trump does, if we do get it back, we should make sure that if somebody down the road, some loosey lefty goes, we got to give it to him. Make sure that there are provisions in place that
never again. Yeah.
Never again. And not for $1. That was crazy.
And I think that I heard someone say yesterday, a politician say, well, Trump likes to in the media fire high, meaning we're going to take over the canal and get them all upset so that he can negotiate at a lesser deal and everyone's happy. But I don't think that's the case here. This is a showpiece, and a lot of Americans to this day, including yours truly, thinks that giving it away for a buck was a stupid idea. And,
well, here's one.
Go ahead.
I was going to say one thing about the canal. It was built for the ships at the time. At the time, it was adequate. It was beyond adequate. Today, it is not so much.
Well, we've widened it. We have spent a lot of our money making it a better passageway. Bill, I don't know. I understand also the Chinese are doing a lot of work down there, and they're almost a de facto operator of the canal. And that's what Trump hates. The Chinese being so close and running something that is ours.
Yeah, and they could be down there using it for they could use it for military use. No, I think we need to take it back over. I do think that we can also not only take it back over, maintain it, we can improve upon it, which we've done anyway. It's our thing.
I think I read, Bill, that going around South America adds 2 weeks to a trip.
Yeah, it's brutal going down that way.
Yeah. Yeah, so, we have our Navy using that passage, the Panama Canal, all the time. And if you want to know the movements of the American Navy, just put a chair on the bank of the Panama Canal and count the ships coming and going. You know what's going on. Mm-hmm. And I think that Trump figures that it is a strategic a point of interest in the world, and we gave it away for no good reason. And by the way, the Panamanians have violated it. They're not running it properly right now. They've really fallen down on the job. And that's what that's what he's going to do to take it back. He's going to prove that he has reason, he has cause to take it back. He has legal cause. He's not going to just grab it. He's going to say, look, we had a deal, we have a contract, and we gave it to you for a buck, but you fell down on your end of the job, and we're taking it back.
He's a real estate guy, so he's dealt with leases and things like that.
Yes.
So that's basically what they're going to do. They're just going to,
And I think Colombia, that president of Colombia, he will. They got a heck of a nerve because before Panama was Panama, Colombia was trying to muscle in on that area, and they were causing a lot of problems for the locals. And all of a sudden, they're trying to make it look like they're the friendly neighbor standing up for Panama. Are you kidding me? If
that whole regime down there is pretty corrupt. So,
and Bill, if you surge 1 million people, or he said millions in the plural, if you surge millions of people on our border, that will be considered an act of war. I guarantee you. Mm-hmm. That's not going to go over very well. One of the things Biden has proven, by the way, with this lax border situation, is that that's a great way of taking over a country. Invaded with civilians. The Americans won't shoot civilians. But I do think that there'll be a wall that will go from the Gulf of Mexico to California. And by the way, there will be Coast Guard ships, watching the waterway. Right now they're coming around the wall in California and landing on beaches in San Diego.
Well, yeah, and actually there's a. I forget where it is, down Tijuana way or whatever, but there's a gate there that's specifically built for them to come through. And Newsom wanted more money to expand that gate. Now, why does California want these people? Why do we want them all together? It's not for labor. Don't even give me that crap, because we've already proven that's a crap, That's a lie. There's an underlying motive there.
I think there has to be. I think that we have to make it clear to our politicians who encourage this that they are aiding and abetting in treason. That, if we have a border and that border is by law meant to be secure, and you think that your state law trumps the federal law, see, we're all part of one United States, right? Mm-hmm. And if one country, one state decides it's going to be rogue and allow these people to break federal law, it hurts everybody in this country. Case in point, Arizona, with this fathead they have down there, the one who I think got in illegally and beat Carrie Lake. What's her name? I forgot her name. You know what I'm talking about. But the one who sounds like a Valley girl. They are much more lax with their border protection than Texas, because they're more towing the party line. And this, I think, a case to be made that if you are allowing people to come through into this country by breaking our laws, then you are part of the crime.
Well, I was going to say, who is their allegiance to? That's what we need to find out, because the American people see what's going on with all these illegals here.
Bill, I heard somebody say, well, wait until Trump gets into office. All of the legal cases that will be brought against him to try to uphold sanctuary cities. They've got to close that door. Seriously, the federal government has got to close that door with laws permanently. There's got to be a point where they say enough is enough, but just the mere fact that you drag all these things into court and slow everything down to a snail's pace, in the meantime, things continue as they always, if it's a sanctuary city, it maintains being a sanctuary city, and more criminal activity takes place. That's got to stop. I mean, right. And I don't know, Bill, I don't even know.
Yeah, but you know what?
Go ahead.
Well, no, I was just going to say, when you talk about legal warfare, I just have this feeling about laws and lawyers, is that this crap has got to stop, because lawyers will make up stuff. We've got to rethink about how we use our judicial system and what its real role is, because you look
it's all, I hate to say it, but it's mostly Democrats too. Somewhere along the line, they've learned that they can manipulate the system big time. They can slow it down. They can take presidential candidates to court. They can accuse them of just about anything, even if it's not true, but they can embarrass them and slow them down, and it has an effect,
Because they use the media, and it becomes the law. Now, if there was no media and they came up with those files and everything, who would hear about it? But I guess still in their little circle of, if they control the judicial system, if they control the media, they can, perception's reality. If you perceive this person as a bad person, they present it that way. That's probably the reality.
At the top of this show, I played for you a cut from 60 Minutes. It used to be one of the most respected news programs in the world, 60 Minutes. And it's become such a propaganda arm of the left. I mean, they're trying to make it look like Mexico has got a handle on gun control, and the U.S. needs to look to Mexico as an example. You've got to be kidding. In the meantime, you have cartels, which are the size of armies, some of these things, and they're fighting the Mexican military, and in some cases, many cases, beating them, because they have a ton of illegal ammunition and firearms.
Well, the cartels in the United States, nobody's talking about that. That's been early on in the Biden administration, and they're in Idaho, I think, or something like that. They're
probably
everywhere.
in every city in the country now.
Well, yeah, and there are things we've talked about that they're into. They're laundering their money. It's pretty well amazing what they're getting away with, but we've got to clean it up. Otherwise, we are on the verge of being a third world country. Yeah.
I hope you bear with me today. I'm a little, I'm a little under the weather. You know, I have something, an allergy.
You and Bill Clinton.
Bill Clinton. He's in the hospital.
Yeah,
he had a fever. I think his fever is Epsteinitis.
Well, that could be. I mean, there is something that they said right around now, between now and Election Day. You know, they had all these fevers and viruses and everything that was going to come down upon the country. Which I thought, yeah, okay, you know, that's just a fair warning about what they're about to unleash.
You may have missed what Epsteinitis is. Epsteinitis was apparently Mr. Clinton, President Clinton. He visited Epstein Island on a number of different occasions, and I guess it was 26 that are in the logbook, 26 different times. I'm sure he was down there to just chill out, But supposedly Trump is going to release all that information about Jeffrey Epstein and his little island getaway and other places, and he supposedly is going to release the Kennedy assassination information. There's going to be a lot of stuff thrown out there.
Well, let me just say this, and I say this with, I say it seriously, but I say it begrudgingly too. But, Trump's got to still get into office. And, he's got a different demeanor now since the assassination attempts and everything.
He does. You're right.
But I think that deep state is out there that they're going, we got to stop this guy no matter what. So don't be surprised if another attempt or something weird happens.
Yeah, I'm afraid you're right. I'm holding my breath. And not only that, even when he gets into office, he's got to be concerned about what's going on. He's got to make sure his security is really good. Did you see where that rough guy, the guy who was the second attempted assassin, the guy who was in, on the chain link fence at the golf course in Florida, they postponed. His attorneys wanted his trial, moved to December of 2025, a year from now. But Judge Eileen Cannon, she picks up all the important cases down there. Huh? She said, "No, we'll put it back to September, not December. We'll do it in September." So that case will be coming up in about 10 months, which should be enough
a lot's
time.
going to happen. Yeah, a lot can happen between now and then. You wonder what the world is going to be, what it's going to be like, because it's kind of crazy out there. But
Trump has promised there's going to be a lot of changes on day one. He's saying don't think about it as being a few days after. He says, I'm going to get sworn in and go right back to the White House and make some changes right off the bat. Within hours, there will be executive orders coming down. And there'll be big changes, so I'm looking forward to that. Anyway, anything you want to add? Any story you want to talk about?
I mean, there's a lot of things in here, but it's not a big news day. I was looking at the Gates thing, though. They're going, they released that report. It's damning, and supposedly I didn't hear him say it. He was going, my past. When I was younger, sure, I might have partied and done a lot of stuff, well, you know what? Because I thought about this before that came out, and I'm going, this is all a smear thing. And
of course it is, yeah.
But, I sat there and I said, everybody's got a past. So they almost ought to sit there and say, okay, enough of this crap.
Let me remind you of what Nancy Pelosi said. I'm going to play this for you, folks. Pay attention.
Down hospitals and the rest of it. So they don't want them to see that contrast, so they focus on something else. And it's a diversionary tactic. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You demonize, and then we call it the wrap-up smear. If you want to talk politics, call it the wrap-up smear. You smear somebody with falsehoods and all the rest, and then you merchandise it. And then you write it, and if they see it's reported in the press that this, and this, so they have that validation that the press reported the smear, and then it's called the wrap-up smear. Now I'm going to merchandise the press's report on the smear that we made. And it's a tactic, and it's self-evident.
She talks about it like she's proud of it. It's called the wrap-up smear. You create a story, meaning what Congress did. They created this this fiction. A lot of it is fiction, and Gates denies a lot of it. He doesn't deny all of it, but he denies a lot of it. And she said they take a story and they put it out there, like through a unnamed spokesman or a White House source said, or they put it out there, and the media grabs hold of that little piece like sharks, and they pounce all over it, and they make it bigger than it actually was. But by them publishing it and reporting it, they validate the rumor, the fiction, and then the politicians go back to the media as their source and say, well, it was in Time magazine, it was in the New York Times, it was on 60 Minutes, which gives it credence,
Credibility, yeah.
Yeah.
See, I think there should be a full disclosure thing. You're going to run for a particular political office. At that time, you go through, they can only check back 9 months, through hair follicles if you've ever done any drugs or anything like that. But they can investigate. But either way, I think you should go through a full disclosure act, at which point in time it's done. That's it. It's public information. You're past, everybody's got a past. Now, I would further say anybody that runs for re-election, that's never gone through it, has to go through that scrutiny. And the reason for that is not to sit there and do an inquisition, but it's to let everyone know, hey, you want to sit there and play this game? You're a part of it now too, pal. All right, so let's go through it, because that might encourage certain players to say, I'm not going to get involved in this. But that would also encourage people like, I would say, just my opinion, Pelosi's got a problem with alcohol. I would say Kamala's got a problem with alcohol. These kind of things could come out in one of those things, and they probably don't want that known.
It should be illegal to have unnamed sources. For a media operation to report a story based upon unnamed sources or sources who spoke on anonymity.
I thought it used to be illegal. Now that was one of the codes of journalism.
Well, it was a code of journalism. It was a code of journalistic code, but it wasn't illegal, and that's wrong.
But okay, but in other words, if you sat there and said, according to sources, unnamed sources, who is your source? Well, I'm not going to tell you. If you don't tell us who your source is,
Well, a lot of journalists would say, well, we have to protect our sources, because if we out our sources, there'll be personal harm of some kind that they'll have.
Well, the problem that you have is you have political hacks that would leak the information. So in that aspect, they're right. But, we've got to stop this thing. If you cannot sit there and we got to find a way to protect the media, to say you have to be able to validate
it's made
that you have real sources.
It's made journalists lazy, in my opinion. They can put
dishonest.
They can put a story together based upon a rumor of some kind. Some guy may say, "Well, I was sitting in a bar and I saw so and so walking with this woman, and it wasn't his wife." And I know, you're taking the word of somebody as being the truth, and in doing so, you're besmirching the reputation of someone else. And I don't know. I think that unnamed sources, if a reporter is a good reporter, he'll use his source to find the truth that he can validate. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, he'll point him in the right direction. It'll point the reporter towards somebody who can tell him the truth and go on record, if you know what I mean. You shouldn't use the source as the end of the line. It should be the channel that takes you to somebody who can tell you the truth and do so in public.
Yeah, I never bought the unnamed sources thing, because you can sit there and make something up and just to get something going. And again, it goes back to that smear tactic. But I look at all through history where unnamed sources, deep throat, and all of that have led to things. But again, history has proven a lot of things wrong.
We're getting towards the end of the year. And I got to ask you, do you ever think a guy like Mayorkas will pay a penalty for what he's done? Because I don't think he has spoken the truth a single time to the American people since he's been in office.
Well, he should have to pay a price. Now, but, I'll go further with that because they're now coming out and saying, yeah, Biden's not making decisions, his handlers are.
Yeah.
They've said that he was not competent to go into the office when he came in. That was a cover-up and a lie. All right, if he was not competent, that means that anything that he did should be null and void. If somebody else was making a decision, that means that we've been under a false flag for 4 years.
Yep.
And that means the whole administration, every act that they've done needs to be null and void.
Every executive order?
Everything.
Wow, if that's the case, then Hunter better watch out. And all these...
That's my opinion because they've already said, the Democrats have admitted that, we have people pulling the strings. He's never been competent. Okay. You just admitted that this was a sham election.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Will the Justice Department and the new administration pursue this? I think they have to. If they're serious, I think in order for them to be taken seriously, they've got to say, wait a second, we have to examine what our predecessor did. Because if it's illegal, it has to be rectified.
Look at these 37 to 40 people on death row that, Joe has sat there and said, you're pardoned, you just have a life sentence. And then there are life sentencers that he's letting out. One of them turned out to be a serial killer, and I'm sitting there going, you know what, right now, somebody ought to immediately put a pause on all of those because Joe really, if it's his handlers doing it, they don't have the authority. He doesn't have the authority because they've already said, yeah, he's incompetent. He was incompetent at the time we ran him.
They didn't ask, the guys who were on death row didn't ask for this appeal. From what I understand, these were just picked out by somebody. Joe didn't sit down and go through files of death row people and say, I'm taking...
We need to put a hold on it right now. We need to freeze in place everything that's going on. That's it. No monies, nothing. Everything stops. If we can do that, we have a government that runs, it's funded, but we need to freeze that White House and anything that Joe says.
Question. Over the past weekend, Kamala was supposed to be out in California. Joe was supposed to be out somewhere, Delaware. They all raced back to the White House, and there was talk that they were going to make Kamala the president for the last month, and I was thinking, okay, let's say they do that. She will probably give a pardon to Joe and everybody in his family, and they're going to cover their own derriere.
But, there's been questions out there recently that Kamala is not in full charge of her mental capacities. And I don't know there's enough time to vet that. So they've got a major problem. That whole administration has not been a functional administration from day one. So,
another story about, you heard about the mega donor, Lindy Lee. She was a regional chairperson of the Democratic National Committee and a big part of Kamala's campaign.
She quit.
She's had an epiphany since the election. She's suddenly realized that she might have been on the wrong side of the aisle. Anyway, she was on one of the talk shows, and I think it was on Fox, and listen to what she said. This is somebody who was one of Kamala's right-hand people. Listen.
You have had some rest? In fact, I challenge you to come back ready to chart our path to the future. Chin up, shoulders back, forever impatient for change.
I mean, Lindy, no disrespect to her, because she's a perfectly nice woman. She would not inspire me to open a bag of chips. I mean, seriously. And I think that she sort of personifies now the ghost of Christmas past, as does Biden. The Democrats have got to move on quickly, haven't they?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. She's indulging delusions of running for governor in California in 2026 and perhaps even running for president in 2020. And I just want to echo what a lot of you guys already said. This past week has been harrowing for me. This Saturday, I went on Fox and Friends and I said that Democrats have a stench of loser hanging over them.
Yeah.
As soon as I said that, there were boycott campaigns against me, unblock, unfollow campaigns. I lost 40,000 followers.
Really?
In 4 days. People have called me the W word. I don't know what we're allowed to say, but you can fill in the blank.
We're uncensored. Say it. Say what the word was.
Am I allowed to?
Yeah.
Well, they called me a whore. They called me the C word. They asked for me to be deported. And you can just search for my name in those terms on X and you'll see a bunch of them. So, all these so-called Democrats, the party of inclusion, the party of diversity, masks off. And it's even worse because they pretend to occupy the moral high ground. At least with Republicans, they are who they are. But with Democrats, they pretend to be, so loving and caring and embracing of diversity. But all of a sudden, when I dare to utter any criticisms of the goddess, Kamala Harris, I get ostracized. Me, after having raised tens of millions of dollars for the party. And I'm being called a grifter when all along, all these years, I've said on TV, I've said to the press, I'm a conservative Democrat. This is not a switch for me. This is just me. This is who I've always been. Yeah. And also, my donors are pissed. They raised $2.5 billion across Super PAC in the campaign. It's my responsibility. It's my duty of care to ask what the hell happened with that money? Why did we spend it? Why did we spend millions of dollars on five-star hotels for campaign staffers? Why did we spend $500,000 essentially bribing Al Sharpton moments before he interviewed Kamala? These are legitimate questions, but no, in the cult, you can't ask questions. Yeah. And leaving the Democratic Party or even questioning the Democratic Party is like leaving a cult.
Wow. Lindy Lee, she was a regional chairperson of the Democratic National Committee. And like she said, she raised millions of dollars for Kamala. And by the way, she's a little ticked off because Kamala blew the money. She said she put people up in five-star hotels. It was a lavish vacation,
and they could charge anything they wanted. I think they believed that they were going to win. They knew that they were going to buy it. They had so much money, they were going to buy it. It was bought. It was a done deal. What they didn't count on was the American populace said, enough is enough. And it was done.
Yeah, I agree. Well, there's somebody who's disenchanted with the Democratic Party and was an insider. Kamala running for governor of California. Maybe she'll win. It is California, and it is corrupt. The sad part of I feel so bad for people in California because so many are conservatives. It's just that the cities are overwhelmingly Democrat. They are so far to the left that you just can't win the state.
California brags that, they have more resources there than any other part of the country. Without it, we would lose some, financial status. That's a true statement. But let me tell you something, California. You break away on your own, you are on your own. And those little lefty-loosey policies that you have and environmental policies and kiss this and kiss that arse, forget it. It's gone. Yeah. Now, all of a sudden, you're going to have to compete in the real world, and you're going to have to get some grit under your fingernails. Just sorry, that's the way life works. And you won't be able to sit there in your little ivory made-up towers and think that life just goes the way you want it to go.
You know, the other thing I wanted to point out before we wrap the show up is I don't know whether you heard about this. Over the weekend, there was a little lady, and she was taking the subway in New York, minding her own business.
Yeah.
She was seated down at the end of the car, and I guess she took a little cat nap, which was the biggest mistake of her life because along came this this guy from Guatemala who had been deported from our country in 2018, but under Biden came back anyway. He was a got-away, meaning he got across the border and just kept going. And so this guy is up here, and he's up to no good. For no good reason, he decides to set her on fire, to light her up. And what gets me, Bill, is a picture that while she's burning in the corner of the train...
He's sitting there watching.
Yes, but not only that, a Port Authority police officer walks into the car, and instead of rushing to the lady who's on fire, he looks nonplussed about the whole thing. It's like, what the hell is he doing? You are an emergency responder. You're supposed to be taking care of the lady who's burning up, not looking for the shooter or the arsonist.
In New York, I've ridden on a subway.
Yeah, I have too. Believe me.
I'm not a regular there, but the locals that ride it day to day, they'll tell you that they've seen all kinds of things.
Hey, listen, I used to take the subway more times than I can. You wanted to go to a ball game up at Yankee Stadium, you took a subway. You want to go see a friend, up in the Upper East Side, you took a subway. Subway's a part of life in New York. But I'll tell you, and I'm talking about back in the late 70s, when I was a young man, I never stood very close to the edge because I was always concerned, even back then, that someone was going to come along and nudge you because it happened even back then.
You.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, the other thing is people take things for granted. They see things, they go, yeah, you go on the subway. You say you've seen it all in life. You haven't until you rode the subway.
Yeah.
Because
true.
you see people that will sit there and defecate. They'll urinate, and they'll even pleasure themselves on it. And what people do is they just get up and walk to the other side.
Well, then they say when Daniel Penny comes along and he becomes a hero, but in doing so is demonized by the left, and you see all the crap that he had to go through just because he decided to be a good Samaritan and rescue somebody from a lunatic. I think I couldn't help but look at that little lady in the corner who was on fire the other day and think, if there was a Daniel Penny in that car that day who could have run over and put the fire out, he may have decided it's not my business. I saw what happened before. I can't get involved. I don't need that right now. And if that's the case, that's what happens when you do what you do, New York, to a good Samaritan, to a hero.
Well, a lot of these people on the left, in power too, they do things, and they do it to suit their narrative, their agenda. And, and getting back to, circle it around the gates again, where they're attacking him because what does he hold in his deck of cards that they don't want to have happen? That's why I'm saying, there needs to be full disclosure on every politician. Nobody is above the law for certain, and nobody is a saint their entire life. Everybody's got a past. So if you want to take this stuff and, and distort somebody's life, let's hear about everybody's.
Tom Homan was on with Brian. Tom Homan was on with Brian Kilmeade, and he was talking about this tragedy on the subway. Listen.
Well, look, this is another example of an illegal alien killing American citizens. It's almost a daily occurrence now, because historic number of criminal aliens walking the streets. Because this administration's policy in sanctuary jurisdictions and lax immigration enforcement. ICE has their hands tied. Secretary Mayorkas have given them priorities that they can't even go arrest an illegal alien anymore unless he's convicted convicted of a serious crime, then maybe they can arrest him. So this is on this administration. As far as Governor Hochul, shame on her. She supports sanctuary status in that state. She welcomed thousands of illegal aliens to her state. She sent them to Buffalo and Syracuse. Murders occurred by illegal aliens in Buffalo and Syracuse. She has a green light law. ICE and CBP can't even work with local law enforcement. Local law enforcement can't even share DMV data with these people. So Governor Hochul, shame on you. There's nothing you can say that's going to make this right in New York.
Sanctuary cities should be outlawed. Pure and simple. It's a violation of our laws. You shouldn't be able to say, well, you're in Chicago now, and you don't have to abide by the laws of our country. You know, you shouldn't be able to pick and choose what laws you follow and what laws you don't follow.
Do they get federal funding?
You know, they do, Bill, but it should be even more. Yes, they could withdraw federal funding. That would hurt. But good people would suffer for no good reason. I think that the politicians who push those laws, the mayors who push those laws, should suffer a consequence. They should be. Why shouldn't they be arrested?
Well, you can arrest them, or the other thing that you can do is, politicians that are paid, anything the government has the purse string on, you tighten that thing up right away. Salaries, everything. So in other words, hey, you can have your sanctuary city, but we're not paying anything for anyone. And that'll also get the population going, wait a minute. I'm not getting my money because of these so-sos, because they have to answer to their constituents. So,
but what happens when the constituents? I understand that Johnson in Chicago has a popularity percentage of like 12% now. He couldn't win dog catcher. He is, and I don't mean to minimize the importance of dog catchers, but I mean, Johnson is not very popular in Chicago now. That being said, he had a town meeting last week where a lot of people stood up and complained about what he was doing with illegals in Chicago, and Johnson had the audacity of having the police escort these citizens out of the meeting. He closed the meeting down.
He's an elected official now, so he figures that he's a king, and I'm sorry, but politicians, many of them have to be put into their place.
They have had no consequence for what they've done.
Look, you are a public servant. You're a public trustee working on our behalf because we put you there. Do your job, or there should be consequences, and people need to quit voting on the party line just to say, I'm electing a Democrat to have a Democrat in. Forget it. If they're not doing their job and you're not happy with it, then go.
I got a question for you. All right. Trump gets into office. Holman is the guy in charge of ICE and deporting all these illegals from our country. A lot of cities like Chicago have said, we're a sanctuary city. We're going to stand by, I think Boston too, we're going to stand by the illegals. You're not going to be able to do it here. What happens if there's a confrontation between city police and ICE? Who is, if I were the city police and I raised my hand to protect the Constitution of the United States first in my oath of office, I would, as a city police officer, even though the mayor is my boss, I would say under my oath, I swore allegiance to this country and this Constitution and form of government, and I have actually more allegiance to that than to the mayor.
Well, I think a lot of these mayors, I think a lot of these police officers, a lot of people, they don't know what the laws really are. They don't know the Constitution. They don't understand any of that. Even a stupid magistrate has to go through 10 days of training to be a magistrate, like in PA, where you don't have to have any law background. You can be elected. But you have to go through some formal training to at least understand the fundamental basics, because they didn't pay attention in school.
Right.
And they're out there doing it now. And I think when people come in to do their citizenship, do they still even teach the Constitution? Anything?
I think they actually do, and I think, Bill, they a lot of our new citizens have a better idea of the history of our country than birth citizens, meaning that the schools fall down when they educate the kids.
We need to educate the people on what the Constitution is, and it can be boiled down into a pretty basic thing, so that you know what your fundamental basic rights and responsibilities and what the country's responsibility is to you.
Well, then maybe what they should do is do a multi-part series on each article in the Constitution. An episode just on each constitutional article. I mean, they should do something to educate the masses, the vast majority of the people. Like you say, Bill, they don't know.
And that's why we have a lot of all this stuff going on.
Anyway, I looked at the clock, and I think we've just about run out of time. It's a little shorter show today because it's the holiday weekend. I think we're taking tomorrow. I know we're taking tomorrow off. It's Christmas. Not sure about the day after Christmas, but check back if you would, because we are playing it by ear based upon the news, what comes down.
What may happen now, if something major breaks, we'll do a Thursday show. We'll probably do a weekend Friday update for the show weekend, because there will by then be things that happened, and we can be prepared for next week.
Also, I want to remind you to try Right Side Coffee, Jim and Bill's Right Side Coffee at rightsideshop.com. There's a lot of other things in our gift shop there too, but Jim and Bill's Right Side Coffee is worth a taste. It's really good. Medium roast
delicioso.
And medium decaf roast. And, of course, we have Juan and Jose and the Border Crossers, too.
Wake up on the right side with Right Side Coffee.
Thanks for bearing with me today, folks. I'm a little, I think the allergies and stuff have gotten me down. Fortunately, the brain kept working. The mouth and the nose were a little stuffed up.
I'll tell you, on Jim's behalf, he's excited because Santa Claus
is coming to town.
And he's waiting to see if he gets what he really wants, and he won't tell me what it is he
Bill,
really wants.
I've been making a list. I checked it twice, and I think I've been good. I haven't been naughty. I've been nice.
I've heard you were on the good list.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Don't believe everything. Don't believe everything you hear. Hey, listen. That's about it for me. Merry Christmas, everybody. Merry Christmas. Have a wonderful holiday weekend. If you don't check back again until Monday, that's fine, too. It is the holiday weekend. But if you would, when you're going to your Christmas party and you're sitting around the table talking with your relatives, tell them about Jim and Bill, It's Another Day. Tell them it's every day, Monday through Friday, and we have usually a weekend show depending upon the news. We keep you informed and throw in our opinion, and we try to make it a fun hour. So we would appreciate you trying to spread the word when you're around a lot of different people. And I'm done, my friend. Merry Christmas, Bill. It's good working with you.
Merry Christmas to you, too. We'll do it nicely. We'll say, hasta la vista, baby.
Merry Christmas.
And a ho, ho, ho to you and your family.
Happy holidays.
This is CRN America.